As the House is aware, the first part of the independent review of criminal courts was published in July. I'm grateful to its chair, Sir Brian Leveson, one of the foremost judges of his generation, and his expert advisors, Professor David Lammy, Chris Mayer and Sean McNally. With this review, Sir Brian has produced a blueprint for once-in-a-generation court reform. It's desperately needed, Mr. Speaker, because this government inherited an emergency in our courts. A record of rising backlog, currently at 78,000 cases. Victims facing agonising delays, with some trials not listed for years. All the while, defendants bide their time. The guilty plea rate has decreased every year since the year 2000. And in the year to June, 11,000 cases were dropped after a charge because victims no longer supported or felt they could support the case. Behind the statistics are real people. Katie was repeatedly abused by her partner. She reported him to the police in 2017, but then had an unbearable 6-year wait for justice. During this time, she lost a job due to her mental health deteriorating. She became increasingly isolated, lived in fear, and lost faith in the court system. Mr. Speaker, this is not isolated, it's systemic. We're all proud of our justice system rooted in the Magna Carta, but we must never forget that it implores us not to deny or delay justice. When victims are left waiting for years, justice is effectively denied to them. And this is a betrayal of our legal heritage, and it's a betrayal of the victims themselves. Some will ask why we don't simply increase funding. This government has already invested heavily in the courts, nearly 150 million to make them fit for purpose, 92 million committed per year for criminal legal aid solicitors, and funding for a record number of sitting days in our Crown Courts, 5,000 more than those funded last year by the previous government. Today I can announce up to £34 million per year in additional funding for criminal legal aid advocates to recognise the vital support that they give to those navigating the system. I will also accept Sir Brian's recommendation to match fund a number of pupilages in the criminal area, to open a career at the criminal bar to more young people from across society. I will also negotiate sitting days with the senior judiciary through the usual Concord Act process, aiming to give an unprecedented 3-year certainty to the system. I'm clear that sitting days in the Crown Court and Magistrates' Courts must continue to rise, and my ambition is to continue breaking records by the end of this Parliament. But as Sir Brian has made clear, investment is not enough. The caseload is projected to reach 100,000 by 2028, and without fundamental change could keep rising, meaning justice will be denied to more victims and trust in the system will collapse. Mr. Speaker, to avoid that disaster, I will follow Sir Brian's bold blueprint for change. First, I will create new swift courts within the Crown Court with a judge alone deciding verdicts in triable either-way cases with a likely sentence of 3 years or less, as Sir Brian recommends. Sir Brian estimates that they will deliver justice at least 20% faster than jury trials. And whilst jury deliberations remain confidential, judges provide reasoning for their verdicts in open court. So this will hardwire transparency into our new approach. Sir Brian also proposes restricting defendants' right to elect for jury trials, a practice not found widely in other common law jurisdictions. And let's be honest, it's a peculiar way to run a public service. Our world-leading judges should hear the most serious cases, and I agree that they and the magistrate should decide where a case is heard.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private internet access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
This will prevent defendants from gaming the system, choosing whichever court they think gives the best chance of success and drawing out the process, hoping victims give up. And I will limit appeals from the Magistrates' Court so that they are only allowed on points of law to prevent justice being delayed further. Alongside these changes, we will increase Magistrates' Court sentencing powers to 18 months. So they can take a greater proportion of lower level offending and relieve pressure on the Crown Court. I will also take power to extend that to 2 years, should it become necessary to leave further pressure. And when it comes to exceptionally technical and lengthy fraud and financial trials, judges will be able to sit without a jury where appropriate. While these cases are small in number, they place undue pressures on jurors to sit for months, a significant interference with their personal and professional lives. These reforms are bold, Mr. Speaker, but they're necessary. I'm clear that jury trials will continue to be the cornerstone of the system for the most serious offences, those likely to receive a sentence over 3 years and all indictable-only offences. Among others, this will include rape, murder, manslaughter, grievous bodily harm, robbery and arson with intent to kill. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to clear up some misconceptions that colleagues unfamiliar in this area might hold. In England and Wales, magistrates have long done the vast majority of criminal cases. That was true in the Victorian era, it's right through to Winston Churchill's time, and today magistrates hear about 90% of criminal cases. In fact, only 3% of trial cases in England and Wales will ever go before a jury, and almost 3/4 of all trials going to the Crown Court will continue to be heard by them under our changes. The party opposite talk about the Crown Court as if it were an ancient institution. I should remind them that it was established in 1971, the year before I was born, to replace a patchwork of part-time courts unable to cope with the rising caseload. Parliament acted because the country needed a more efficient system that could command public confidence. We now face an emergency in the courts, and we must act. As Lord Chancellor, my responsibility is to ground reform in the rule of law and the right to a fair trial. We will ensure cases are dealt with at the right level proportionate to their severity and deliver the swifter justice victims deserve. I'm also clear that we must future-proof our approach. Technology is changing almost every aspect of our lives, and the courts can be no exception. This means that we must modernise, Mr. Speaker. We have asked Sir Brian to write a second report focused on efficiency and how we can make much better use of technology to deliver the modern and effective courts the public rightly expect. Mr. Speaker, we'll also continue to support victims to make sure that they have the confidence to come forward and see justice through to its conclusion. I announced this week that I will provide multi-year funding for victim support services, including specialist emotional and practical support for victims of domestic violence and domestic abuse, and increased budgets to reflect rising costs. And this will give providers a certainty to plan for the next 3 years. And it amounts to a total investment a record investment in victims of £550 million, more than £500 million. I want those victims to stay the course. Finally, we must also be honest that this is a problem that has taken years to build up. It will take years to fix. The changes I'm proposing will require legislation that will take time to implement. Our investment will also need time to have an effect. But we are pulling every possible lever to move in a positive direction, and my ambition for the backlog to start coming down by the end of this Parliament remains, and I commend this statement to the House.
Yeah. We now come to Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
Well, I'm glad to see that the Justice Secretary has finally come into work today. When 12 prisoners were mistakenly released after the introduction of his brilliant new checks, he didn't bother to come to Parliament to inform the country. Then when I asked his department whether it's paying compensation to terrorists in prison, he didn't show up. And when the news of his plans to scrap jury trials mysteriously emerged in the press last week, he was nowhere to be seen. Like the prisoners under his watch, he's been a man on the run, the Lammy Dodger of this sorry charade for a government. But now today we are blessed with his presence, and his past is catching up with him, because the best opponent of the Justice Secretary's plans to curb jury trials is the Justice Secretary himself. In 2020, he said, "Criminal trials without juries are a bad idea. You don't fix the backlog with trials that are widely perceived as unfair."
Remember that, David.
In 2017, in his report into prejudice in the criminal justice system, he found juries, and I quote, "act as a filter for prejudice." But now he's become Justice Secretary, he's scrapping the very institution he once lauded. Which is it? Will the real David Lammy please stand up? And it isn't just him. Who can guess which Labour MP said taking away jury trials would be a wholly draconian act?
Is it Mary Antoinette?
It's his junior minister. And what about this? There should be a right to trial by jury in all criminal cases. Any ideas, Mr. Speaker? Who else? It's the Prime Minister this time. Does this government have no shame? Now, yesterday the Justice Secretary boldly claimed that if the medieval barons were around today, they'd support his changes. Well, then again, English history has never been his specialist subject, has it? 800 years on from the Magna Carta, we have another unpopular leader who doesn't listen to his subjects, levies eye-watering taxes, and a state that locks people up for what they say. Well, I say, the link between British citizens and the administration of justice is as important as ever. A link that serves as a check on an occasionally overbearing state. Our ancestors did not stop bad King John, only to be undone 800 years later by this Prime Minister and his court jester. And all of this because the Justice Secretary can't manage his own department. This morning, more than 50 Crown courtrooms sit empty in England alone.
Can I just gently say, I wanted, quite rightly, the Justice Secretary to be heard without comment from the front benches, so I certainly expect the same in return. Do we understand? Thank you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, more than 50 Crown courtrooms sit empty in England alone. In fact, over 21,000 court days have gone unused this year. And why? Not because there are too many juries, but because the Justice Secretary won't fund the sitting days. Had he done so, the backlog would have shrunk by up to 10,000 cases rather than the fact it's risen this year. The truth is, scrapping juries is a choice. This government could find the money to bear down on the backlog of asylum claims. It could find the money to spend more on benefits, just not to fund the courts to sit round the clock. Last year, the entire budget for courts and legal aid was £5.5 billion. almost exactly the same amount of money, £5.4 billion, that we spent on illegal migrants. He defends their rights under the ECHR, but not our rights under Magna Carta. And for what? He can't even guarantee that in 4 years' time, this will reduce the backlog. With this Justice Secretary, it is justice delayed and justice denied. So I ask him, much of the rest of the package announced today is sensible, but why has it taken 17 months? The Bar Council, the Law Society, the Criminal Bar Association have all said that jury trials are not the problem.
You're faced in the wrong way. It's very hard when you're looking at the doors. Thank you.
Just Mr. Speaker. So why did he not start by reforming the probation service, the court listings, and tackling delays from late prison transfers? Why has he still not taken up the Lady Chief Justice on all the sitting days she's offered him? And lastly, why on earth does this Justice Secretary think he has a mandate to rip up centuries of jury trials without even a mention of it in his party's manifesto? In his twisted logic, he says he's scrapping juries to save them. But be in no doubt, if the Justice Secretary gets away with this, is the beginning of the end of jury trials. He's already in retreat. Let's unite to send him packing for good.
Justice Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to the Shadow Justice Secretary, and I am a little surprised that in his tirade he never once mentioned victims. Not once. Not once in his clip did he talk about the people waiting in that backlog. He's boasted about himself as an armchair historian. Can I just give him a history lesson, Mr. Speaker? In 2019, sitting days in the Crown Court were cut by almost 15%. They oversaw a 12% reduction in Crown Court trials. And many of us remember, over those 14 years of austerity, the magistrates' courts that closed in local communities, the Crown courts that closed in local communities under his watch. It was a political decision, not my words, the words of the senior presiding judge of England and Wales. I wonder how he'll try to blame the pandemic for that decision. He talks about what I tweeted in 2020. We are saving and protecting jury trials. Jury trials will continue. He talks about trial by jury as if we live in the United States. 90% of criminal trials, 1.3 million, are done by our magistrate in this country, which has existed for 650 years, and we are going to grow our magistrates who we believe could do more. He talks about the Magna Carta. Yes, Article 9 establishes the jury trial, which we are proud of, and 39 establishes the jury trial, and it establishes a fair trial. But he knows too that Article 40 asks us not to delay justice, and that is the substance of this debate, and that is why we need reform. He knows too that the Conservatives took juries away from defamation cases in 2013. Back in 1933, we had juries sitting in civil cases. So of course we reform to meet the needs of the system. He knows also that because of DNA evidence, because of CCTV, for a whole raft of reasons, police arresting 10% more, we have a demand issue. We must meet that challenge, and we must ensure that we put the victim at the centre of our criminal justice system. That's who it's there for, and it's why he should have mentioned them.